All right, so find the sum of the measures of the interior angles of a figure. How do you find the sum, meaning what all of the inside angles add up to? N minus 2 times 180. What does N stand for? The number of sides. What does N minus 2 help you find? The number of triangles. So there's always 2 less than the number of sides. Then you multiply times 180. So there's that. So how many sides do we have in this shape? 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if you notice, I counted the corners. You can count the corners or you can count the literal sides. It's up to you. I think the corners are a little easier for me to keep track of. But 10 minus 2 is 8 times 180 is correct. 1,440 degrees. Monday, that 7.1 assignment is due. It's 10 questions. I feel like a lot of you started it. Did you start it yesterday? If you didn't, that's fine. You probably have time at the end of class today because we already did most of the notes. We did page 4. We did page 5, right? Yes? Okay. So we talked about equilateral, which means all the sides are the same. Equiangular, which means all the angles are the same. What happens if it has equal angles and equal sides? It's called regular. Great. That means you can split the inside angles evenly by the number of angles. So we did this question. So that brings us to the back, where we're just going to review all of the things. And then that's the end of 7.1 and the end of chapter 7. Technically, you've already learned everything from chapter 7. We're going to review it. So this first one, it says find, it's on the very back page, find the sum of the measures of the interior angles. Whenever you see this phrase, how are we going to find the sum of the interior angles? Correct. N minus 2 times 180. It means what do all the inside angles add up to? And we use this formula. So we need to first know what N is. How many sides does a dodecagon have? 12 sides. So N is 12. 12 minus 2 is 10 times 180. That should be easy. 1,800 degrees. 1,800. The second, so the sum of the interior angles is given, and it's 1260. We're going to classify the polygon by the number of sides. So we know that's how many degrees are inside of the shape. We can set it equal to the formula, because n minus 2 times 180 usually gives us the sum. And in this case, we know the sum. We do not know n. So what is the first thing we want to do? Divide by 180. What is 1260 divided by 180? 7 equals n minus 2. And then last, we're going to add 2. So how many sides does this shape have? 9. Have I classified it yet? No. What is a 9-sided shape classified as? Non-agon. A lot of people try to do this in their head, and it's fine, or in their calculator. But what I notice the most is that where you're supposed to add, a lot of people try to subtract. So remember, you're doing the exact opposite of the formula. The opposite of multiplying times 180 is dividing by 180. The opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. So if you are one of those who wants to do it in your head, just keep that in mind. We're going to do 2 more. One of them is on your paper. One of them we'll write down here in a second. Number 3, we're going to find the measure of the missing angles. There are 2 ways to do this, but both of them include figuring out how many degrees should be inside of this shape. So what do we call this 5-sided shape? A pentagon. How do we figure out how many degrees are inside of a pentagon? Yes, n minus 2 times 180. So how many triangles are there in this shape if we have 5 sides? 3 triangles times 180. How many degrees is that? 540. So from here, you can do two things. I'll show you the algebra way and then show you the in your head way. What do these arcs mean at B and E? They're congruent, and they aren't called anything. You can call them the same thing because they are the same measure. So you could call them both x if you want, and you can add them. So x plus x plus, don't forget about your 90, plus your 170. I'm just going to combine that to 170. And it will equal 540 degrees. Combine like terms, what's 90 plus 170? 260. And then x plus x makes 2x. Subtract 260. So 2x equals 280. And divide by 2, and x is 140 degrees, which means each of them is 140 degrees. So the way to do it in your head a little bit is just to subtract the 100, the 70, and the 90, and then divide whatever you have left over evenly into two separate angles. It's the same process, just less written. The last question is not drawn or written on your paper. You're going to have to write it down. So go ahead and find room at the bottom. Find the measure of each interior and exterior angle of a regular hexagon. Find the measure of each interior and exterior angle of a regular hexagon. You'll just write it down. We'll do it together. What does regular mean to me? Yes, it's equilateral, which means all the sides are congruent, and then all the angles are congruent because it's also equiangular. We're going to focus on the angles and the fact that all the angles are congruent. To find the sum of to find what each interior angle is, we need to know the sum of the interior angles first. That's how many degrees fit inside of the shape. And then we're going to divide it evenly by the number of angles. So we're going to find the sum and then plug it in. So finding the sum of the inside is n minus 2 times 180. How many sides does a hexagon have? 6. So how many triangles does it have? 4 times 180, which is 720. So there's 720 degrees. We want to divide it evenly between all 6 of the angles. So we do 720 divided by 6, which is 120, which means each angle is 120. 120, 120, 120, 120, 120, 120. For the exterior, we're going to do the same thing, except for we need the sum of the exterior over the number of angles. This one is easier because what's the sum of the exterior for any shape? 360 divided by the number of angles, which is still 6, and that makes 60 degrees. These two angles should always add up to 180. They're a linear pair when you look at the picture. So 120 plus 60 is 180, so that works.